In 1994, while most people were still trying to understand what the internet even was, Jeff Bezos made a decision that would permanently reshape global commerce. At the time, he was working at a prestigious Wall Street hedge fund, earning a high salary and standing on a clear path toward financial security. But one statistic changed everything. Internet usage was growing at 2,300% per year. That explosive growth captured his imagination and refused to let go. Bezos later described his decision-making process as a regret minimization framework. He imagined himself at 80 years old and asked whether he would regret leaving a safe career to chase an uncertain opportunity. The answer was clear. He would regret not trying. So he walked away from stability, packed up his life with his wife Mackenzie, and drove across the country to Seattle, drafting a business plan during the journey. His initial idea was simple, an online bookstore, but his vision was anything but small. From the very beginning, Bezos wasn't just selling books. He was laying the foundation for what he called the everything store. At a time when retail was entirely physical and e-commerce sounded experimental, even unrealistic, Bezos was already building for a digital future. In 1994, inside a modest garage, Amazon was born, not as a bookstore, but as the blueprint for a new era of global commerce. In its early days, Amazon was far from the trillion-dollar empire we know today. It was a small startup operating out of a garage, with desks famously built from cheap wooden doors to save money. But even then, Jeff Bezos was already instilling the principles that would define Amazon's culture for decades. From the beginning, he was relentlessly obsessed with one thing: the customer. While competitors focused on profits and short-term gains, Bezos focused on long-term dominance. He reinvested nearly every dollar back into the company, expanding warehouses, improving logistics, and building technology infrastructure that most people didn't yet understand. Wall Street grew impatient. Critics called Amazon unprofitable and reckless. For years, the company posted minimal profits or none at all. But Bezos ignored the noise. He believed scale, speed, and customer loyalty would eventually create an unbreakable competitive moat. Internally, he demanded extremely high standards. Meetings were intense, expectations were unforgiving, and mediocrity had no place in the organization. Bezos introduced the concept of Day One, a philosophy that reminded employees to operate with the urgency and hunger of startup, no matter how large the company became. To him, complacency was death. Every decision had to serve growth, innovation, and customer experience. What looked like risk from the outside was, in Bezos's mind, calculated long-term strategy. And slowly, relentlessly, Amazon began transforming from an online bookstore into the infrastructure of modern commerce itself. By the early 2000s, Amazon was no longer just an online bookstore. It was becoming something far more ambitious. Jeff Bezos understood that true dominance would not come from selling products alone, but from building infrastructure. One of his boldest moves came in 2005 with the launch of Amazon Prime. At the time, offering fast, unlimited shipping for a flat annual fee seemed financially reckless. Critics argued it would destroy margins. But Bezos saw what others missed. If customers felt locked into speed and convenience, they would buy more and stay longer. Prime transformed shopping behavior and turned loyalty into a subscription engine that competitors struggled to replicate. Even more revolutionary was Amazon Web Services. Originally created to solve Amazon's internal technology challenges, AWS quietly launched in 2006 as a cloud computing platform. Few realized the magnitude of this move. While retail remained competitive and low margin, cloud infrastructure would become one of the most profitable sectors in technology. AWS allowed startups, corporations, and even governments to run their operations on Amazon servers. It wasn't just a product, it was the digital backbone of the internet economy. Companies like Netflix, Airbnb, and countless others were built on Amazon's infrastructure. Through Prime, AWS, marketplace expansion, and global logistics, Bezos transformed Amazon into something unprecedented, a hybrid of retailer, technology platform, logistics empire, and cloud powerhouse. What began as an online bookstore had evolved into a system that powered how the modern world shops, streams, stores data, and builds businesses. Bezos wasn't simply expanding a company. He was constructing an ecosystem designed to outlast competitors and redefine entire industries. As Amazon's power expanded, so did the scrutiny. Jeff Bezos was no longer just a visionary founder. He had become one of the most influential and controversial figures in global business. reports began surfacing about harsh warehouse conditions, intense productivity quotas, and a demanding corporate culture that left little room for weakness. Former employees described a workplace driven by data, metrics, and constant performance evaluation. Supporters argued that such intensity was necessary to maintain innovation at massive scale. Critics, however, questioned the human cost behind the efficiency. Beyond labor concerns, Amazon faced growing accusations of anti-competitive behavior. Lawmakers and regulators examined whether the company unfairly leveraged its marketplace data to compete against third-party sellers. As Amazon expanded into nearly every sector, from groceries to entertainment to cloud infrastructure, questions arose about monopoly power and the concentration of economic influence. Governments across the United States and Europe launched investigations, signaling that Amazon was no longer just a company, but a force shaping global markets. Meanwhile, Bezos himself entered the spotlight in new ways. His acquisition of the Washington Post, his high-profile divorce, and the public launch of Blue Origin, the aerospace company competing in the private space race, added layers to his public persona. He was no longer simply the CEO of Amazon. He was a symbol of extreme wealth in an era of widening inequality. To some, he represented visionary ambition and long-term genius. To others, he embodied corporate excess and unchecked capitalism. The greater Amazon grew, the more complex its legacy became. In 2021, after nearly 3 decades at the helm, Jeff Bezos announced he would step down as CEO of Amazon. The decision marked the end of an era, but not the end of his influence. Andy Jassy, the architect behind Amazon Web Services, would take over daily operations, while Bezos transitioned into the role of executive chairman. For many, the move symbolized a shift from relentless operator to long-term strategist. Yet, even in stepping aside, Bezos ensured that the culture, systems, and principles he embedded would continue to drive the company forward. By the time he stepped down, Amazon was worth over $1 trillion, employing more than 1 million people worldwide and shaping industries far beyond retail. It had redefined logistics, normalized 2-day shipping, pioneered large-scale cloud computing, and built a subscription ecosystem that locked in customer loyalty at a global scale. Few founders in modern history have transformed so many sectors simultaneously. But Bezos' ambitions extend beyond Earth. Through Blue Origin, he continues pursuing a vision of space commercialization, believing that humanity's long-term survival depends on expanding beyond the planet. To him, Amazon was never the final destination. It was one chapter in a broader mission centered on building infrastructure for the future, whether digital or interplanetary. Jeff Bezos' legacy is complex and polarizing. He is admired as one of the most disciplined long-term thinkers in business history and criticized as a symbol of hyper-capitalist intensity. Yet one fact remains undeniable. From a garage startup to a global empire, he did not merely build a company. He architected a system that reshaped how the world buys, builds, and connects.